Hi all, welcome to your forecast for the week of May 18th through May 24th, 2025. This is your astrological and tarot forecast. We're going to start with the astrology and then get into your usual 3-card tarot reading for the week. I want to remind everyone that if you get something out of these readings, if you like my style, you can join me over on Patreon. I offer more timely readings. We're going to have a pick a card coming out this coming week that's focusing on what you can do to stay grounded through collective upheaval of the flavor that we're going through currently, the ways you can resist at a personal level, at a community level. And that will be live by the end of this coming week. So if that sounds compelling to you, you can join me over there starting at the sun tier or up. We also have our new moon in Gemini reading that's coming out next week. And that is a deep look at this current or upcoming lunar cycle. And that also features a tarot reading for patrons. And that's available at the moon tier and up. There's a lot of other stuff you can find over there. So if you're interested in going deeper, again, click the link below and go check it out. I also don't think I've mentioned recently that I'm back on Instagram for now and on Threads for now. I left for like 5-6 months in November and came back last month. And it's been interesting, and I don't know if I'll stay, but I am posting content over there. So if you do want to find more stuff from me, you can find me over there on Blue Sky, and you can also request to join my Discord server. Those are kind of the primary ways to stay connected, beyond, of course, joining my email newsletter, which is the best place to get all of the things. Okay, I think that's it for updates. Let's get into our forecast for this coming week. All right, so we have a big week. This is a week that's chock full of major transits, and we also notably have Saturn entering Aries at the end of the week this Saturday, which is a big shift, a big deal. But there's a lot of stuff happening before then. But I mention that because everything I say up until Saturday will be in the context of Saturn edging closer and closer to the very, very end of Pisces and the very beginning of Aries. And so we are feeling it. We've been feeling it. Saturn at the anaretic degree of Pisces is a big deal because Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. So this is closing out a major, major chapter. And we will be feeling that again all week long. If you notice yourself closing things out, if relationships are ending, if old patterns are coming up, if old complexes, all sorts of stuff are really brimming to the surface, that's likely a big part of this. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with just the daily transits, and then we'll talk more about Saturn and Aries. So beginning on Sunday, May 18th, Jupiter forms a sextile to Chiron. Jupiter is currently in Gemini and Chiron is in Aries. And this is a notable moment. It might be subtle, but nonetheless potent, where something at a belief level and at a wound level, like an identity wound level, is coming into conversation. We might be noticing the ways that old beliefs are still informing our identity, or societal conditioning, or, the belief systems we were raised within are really feeding into our sense of self and either inhibiting us or shaming us or doing something to kind of tamp us down. And this could be an important moment where we recognize it and we realize there's an opening here, because in seeing that blockage, that's also the window, or that's the doorway out of the room that we feel currently stuck in. Chiron in Aries has been challenging when it comes to ourselves, our meanness, our individuality, our sense of selfness and independence and power and confidence. You may have felt like your freedom has been inhibited in some way with Chiron and Aries, or like your ability to self-express and feel confident and bold and take action toward what you want has somehow been challenged. And again, this moment where Jupiter is in conversation with Chiron through a sextile, we are probably talking about or exploring or at least noticing the ways that these old belief systems and these old patterns and this old conditioning is inhibiting us from maybe expressing ourselves authentically, from going after what we really want, There's something there, some sort of force that is kind of interrupting those desires. And today we get to see it. Really, throughout this whole week, we get to see it and explore it. So if you're having important conversations or reading or listening to stuff that's illuminating these old embedded beliefs, see that as a beautiful opportunity to adjust, to make new choices, to maybe choose a new way of being or operating. On Monday, May 19th, Jupiter then forms a square to the lunar nodes. And so I'm using the calculation for the true nodes, and there are different ways to calculate it, but I mention that because it may be different from a timing perspective from what you're seeing from other astrologers, but I use the true node. Jupiter squaring the nodes, this is also called at the bendings, when a planet is forming a square to the lunar nodes, a 90-degree angle. And this moment, right on the heels of that Jupiter-Chiron sextile, now Jupiter squares the nodes and forms this challenging aspect to the nodes of fate. And the lessons that we've been learning, the experiences we've been having, and maybe the experiences we want to have or that we desire to have, are feeling in conflict. Like there's something that's sort of pushing us or forcing us through a sieve and asking us to grow and evolve and change. And it's one thing to think something, and it's one thing to embody it. And so to give you a clear example, it can be easy to identify a certain way versus to actually live the lifestyle of someone who carries that as part of who they are. Like, for example, this is something that comes up a lot with queerness. Like maybe we identify as queer, but we haven't sort of like explored our sexuality or explored our identity a whole lot. And that doesn't make it any less valid. It just means that there's something where like the rubber hasn't hit the road, or we haven't been able to learn through experience what it is that we truly want or desire. And so there's something here about wisdom versus knowledge, or like identification versus lived experience. We often accumulate wisdom through our life experiences. We can read about something, we can study something, we can intellectualize something, and that's kind of Mercury's land. But Jupiter is what takes us into the sort of embodied experience of living something and then experiencing the growth of wisdom and knowledge that comes from that. And so that's the sort of knowledge that like gets digested and that gets catalyzed into this wisdom that we carry with us throughout our lives. And so this moment could be challenging you in some way between what you think you know versus what you've lived through. It could be challenging you to open up to new experiences that really enhance your life and enhance you as a person. So maybe this is a moment where you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you feel challenged between like what you think you know versus what you've gone through, or what you want to cling to, the ideas you want to cling to versus the sort of soul level knowledge and ripe experience that is calling for you. We do have the South Node in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, and the North Node in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. So there's a real emphasis on the North Node here, and a real impulse that we might feel to go toward experience that feels uncomfortable and that sort of unravels old beliefs within us. So maybe this is the opportune moment for you to try something new, to do something new, to relate in a new way to knowledge, to shift perhaps from intellectualizing and obsessing on data and facts and information, and instead to shift into something that's more built on experience. Like go out there and live, go out there and learn, go out there and get your hands dirty and do something, as opposed to sitting back and trying to think it to death. You might notice, again, throughout this whole week, that there's a real emphasis on what we have experienced and the living wisdom within us. Like this is something that's been coming up for me personally a lot in relationship land and in love land. I've been sort of challenged by like the things that I thought I knew, and yet I've behaved in different ways that are like out of accordance with the things that I rationally know. And this is like a human thing that happens all the time, right? Like we have all this knowledge, someone gives us advice, or we hear something, or we read something in a book, and yet we keep falling flat on our faces in the same way because we can't seem to put that into practice. We can't seem to get past the mind and get into the like making different choices and doing things differently. And this, again, could be the week where we get to do that, where we get to start making different choices, where we get to kind of practice what we preach or practice what we've learned. And that may again come through discomfort, through uncomfortable challenges that sort of ask us to choose differently or to do differently. On Tuesday, the sun in Taurus forms a sextile to Saturn, which at this point is at 2937 Pisces. So there are only, it's 29, gets up to 2959, and then it'll switch to 30 degrees, which is the very, 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 very end of that sign. And so we're very close to the end here. And the sun in Taurus forming a sextile to anaretic Saturn in Pisces is illuminating something that we are crystallizing, especially in our Pisces house, but really throughout our mutable houses. So Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, and Sagittarius are the mutable signs. And throughout Saturn's time in Pisces, Saturn has been challenging those parts of our chart. So those mutable houses have really been under a restructuring. There's been this impulse to develop and to change and to reinforce and to create new boundaries and to maybe demolish old ones, to tear down structures in our mutable houses that have been inauthentic or unstable, and to rebuild something that is more authentic. And so you've likely noticed some real maturation occur for you, especially in your Pisces house, but again, in those mutable houses too. But that's probably come through pain. It's probably come through challenge. It's probably come through breakdown and through moments that really asked you, like, can you stand in integrity? Can you live a more aligned and real life? Can you be true to what you actually believe in? Can you tear down the things that are unstable, that are not on solid ground? And can you reimagine? That's a keyword with Pisces is imagination. And Saturn in Pisces, I feel, has really called on us to access our imagination in more responsible ways. And that means not, moving into like, I don't really like the term magical thinking because I'm a witch and an astrologer, but there's a time and place for it. And I think more of like the dissociative or getting lost in fantasy land at the expense of reality, at the expense of action, at the expense of ourselves. That's been a really hard-earned lesson for a lot of us throughout Saturn's time in Pisces. Like, you can't simply escape reality. You can't just stay constantly dissociated without that coming at a great cost. And you can't turn away from the collective reality that we're currently experiencing and just save yourself. There's a real call for us to get real and to get honest about the collective issues that are affecting all of us in subtle ways and in really loud ways. And that depends on privilege. And so, we're in a moment collectively where there is such intense violence and rising fascism and incredible abuses of power. And it's very easy for a lot of people to turn a blind eye to that, to say, I opt out because this isn't personally directly affecting me at this point. And I feel that Saturn in Pisces has been trying to give us a wake-up call and remind us all of the ways that we are connected deeply, if not like in the 3D, at least energetically, emotionally. Like, we are affected by what's happening collectively and globally. And it's been very easy to pull the wool over our eyes, to hide under the blankets, and to imagine our way out, and to just hope like, oh, someone else is going to do something about this, or like, this isn't my responsibility because I'm privileged. This is a moment to really see the ways that you might still be doing that, or maybe the ways that you've overcome that. Maybe the ways that throughout Saturn and Pisces, you have really stepped up and really owned your individual responsibility to the collective. And that doesn't have to mean like hitting the streets and protesting or doing like direct action per se. Like maybe you've just emotionally and mentally engaged more than you used to. And that is a step in the right direction. And now how can you look at that growth and ask yourself what more needs to be done here for me to be showing up in integrity? I realize that's a lot of words. I feel like I've been kind of preaching a little bit, so sorry. But this sextile is illuminating our growth again. And it's sort of a gentle highlight moment. So this could be a beautiful day on Tuesday to reflect on how far you've come since like 2023 and to really spend some time assessing what's changed in your mutable houses. Where does Pisces fall in your house and what restructurings have occurred there? What would you like to invest more into and maybe less into? Where do you need boundaries so that you can show up and feel like you're living the life of someone that you really want to be? Like that could be the moment where you're like, this is the person I imagine myself to be and this is who I'm being, and how can I bridge that gap and bring those closer together? And that's not an effort in perfection or like, we don't have to be these pure, perfect people. That's impossible and boring. But like, how can I strive to be the person that I would be proud to be? And how can I offer myself compassion and forgiveness for the ways that I fall short, for the ways that I'm human, for the ways that other people around me are human? Like that sort of healthy idealism, like reaching towards something, but also having compassion for yourself is a real Pisces growth edge and Virgo growth edge. And so this could be an opportune moment for you to really assess your growth and ask yourself what more you would like to strive for or explore. On Tuesday, later in the day, we experience a last quarter moon in Aquarius. So last quarter moon, the moon is forming a square to the sun, this case, the sun in Taurus, and they're at the very end here of Taurus and Aquarius at 29:43. And this is sort of like a last little fixed challenge between the luminaries before they both shift signs. And the sun in Taurus, challenged by the moon in Aquarius, is like, I want to embody something, Taurus, versus I want to intellectualize something, Aquarius. And this theme of like the body versus the mind is very rooted this week. It's very present because we might feel compelled to go into the mind, to rationalize, to think, to try to ideate and strategize. And then the sun in Taurus in these final moments is like, okay, but I have some wisdom to offer too. And it's sitting right here in this 3D meat suit that I occupy. So you're trying to think this away. I'm trying to be in my body. And that might feel challenging in this moment, especially as we're about to zip into Gemini energy, which takes us much, much faster than Taurus. And so this final square between the luminaries before that shift is a moment where it's like, I can tell that you're about to zip ahead. I can feel like we're like locking in and we're ready to rock, but please care for your body. Like, please take a breath, have a sip of water, go take a nap. Like, there's something that needs to be attended to with the body before we can do that zipping and zapping. Later, about 30 minutes later, the moon then enters Pisces. And so we're in water. We were just in Saturn-ruled Aquarius, and now we're in waterland and mutable water. And the moon in Pisces can often, after the moon in Aquarius, can feel like a real softening moment. In this case, it's a little bit complicated because the sun is entering Gemini later that day too. And so we go from fixed earth Taurus into mutable air Gemini, and we go from fixed air Aquarius into mutable water Pisces. So fixed to mutable in the same day with both luminaries. And that's like, I've been stuck in something, I've been standing in it, I've been rooting in it, I've been trying to build it and sustain it. And now we're like, now let's flow. It kind of feels like this moment where we get to like the edge of the rock and then we like slide down the water slide. I don't know. It feels like there's sudden movement and sudden change. And that probably comes from us loosening up. So if we've been taking something really seriously, if we've been really fixated on something, especially throughout Taurus season, this moment could offer us maybe some levity and some change and some movement that helps us shake free some of the debris that we've been sitting in and clinging to for a while. Both Taurus and Aquarius and all the fixed signs can really cling. They can really hold on. And there's a purpose to that, and there's a power to that. But it can also exhaust us and deplete us and keep us clinging to things that are meant to roll, things that are meant to fall away. And so this could be a falling away moment where suddenly we shift our focus. Suddenly we feel a little bit more light. Suddenly we feel like there's a little bit more movement and access and opportunity for us to change. So that comes on Tuesday with the luminaries shifting, and you will very likely feel it. On Thursday, May 22nd, Venus forms a trine to Mars. They're both in fire signs. Venus is in Aries, Mars is in Leo. It's kind of hot, it's kind of fun, it's kind of flirty, and it could be a little bit infectious. Maybe a weird choice of words, but I would keep that in mind. We do have COVID that is ramping up once again. It has not gone away, but it is ticking up again, and that could be kind of literal. We do have some Neptune stuff going on here too, so infectious. Just be mindful, especially if you're having sexy times, like take precautions. Venus trine Mars can be flirtatious, and often it can sort of blow through our barriers, especially in relationships. And there is this clarification around our pleasure and our desire, and there might be this impulse to pursue, to go after something that we want. Maybe we want to feel a bit more bold, a bit more sexy, and there's something that's like in us that day that feels kind of spicy, and especially building up to it. So Thursday could be that moment where we feel kind of spicy. Maybe you want to put on like a hot outfit and do something that helps you feel sexy and alive. It would be a good day to like dance or like go hang out with friends or go flirt or go do something that helps you really feel that fire. Great day to create, to make, to do something that honors your desires. The moon then forms a conjunction to the North Node, and I don't usually name this transit or like the moon's aspects in these weekly forecasts, but this feels important because we have a lot going on in late Pisces, and with the moon joining the North Node in Pisces, it feels like there's a moment where emotional knob is getting turned up and maybe our feelings get louder. Maybe we're wanting to express ourselves, our sensitivity feels higher. And it could be emphasizing something, again, that we've been learning in Pisces for a long time. And so this day, pay attention to that Pisces house, and really this whole week, pay attention to your Pisces house and ask yourself what is getting louder right now. Later that day on Thursday, the sun in Gemini forms a sextile to Neptune, which is now in Aries. And the sun has just moved into Gemini, so it's early, 1:40 Gemini. And the sextile to Neptune can feel kind of dreamy. It can feel a little bit fantastical and maybe fun. Like maybe there's this impulse for us to like kind of have some fun or to like rev our energy up on this day. Our spirit could feel a little bit more active, but possibly a little bit like we're not holding on to anything. Like there's nothing quite solid. We're not necessarily creating something that's tangible or lasting. It's more like, oh, our conversations feel fluid and dreamy. They feel kind of sweet and illuminating or like eye-opening. And there's something that's kind of evocative and fun even from this sun sextile to Neptune. This can be a creative energy. This can be something that feels more spiritual in nature. But in Gemini and Aries, it feels like that's, again, happening through connection, through camaraderie, through moments of fun, and through activity. Finally, on that day, the moon then enters Aries. And so more Aries emphasized here. We just had that sun sextile to Neptune, and the moon enters Aries and goes over the same terrain. And so we're wanting to express it. We're wanting to say it. We're wanting to bring something through us. And maybe our like impulses and desires feel more pressing and urgent and alive. This feels like a great day for art making. It feels like a great day for interesting conversation, for doing things that light us up and help us to feel alive and active. So do something for your body and your spirit on Thursday that feels reinforcing and authentic. But again, please be careful. Please mask up this week, especially if you're in crowds, if you're going to events, if you're doing stuff like that. Take care of your bodies and don't get too impulsive that you take big risks. On Friday, May 23rd, Mercury in Taurus forms a sextile to the North Node in Pisces. So this is their last conversation before Mercury moves on to Gemini. And this could be another day. Just so many conversations this week. Big conversations are happening. It feels like all week long. And if not conversation, it's like a podcast you listen to, the lyrics of a song, overhearing someone else's conversation, seeing a billboard, getting like a synchronicity, or just hearing or being exposed to information that really offers some possibly profound realizations. And this Mercury in Taurus, North Node in Pisces moment is really showing us something, especially in those houses, in Taurus and in Pisces. So where do those fall in your natal chart, and what are the themes of those natal houses? That stuff is up for investigation. A Mercury sextile to the North Node also means it's a Mercury trine to the South Node. So sometimes information about the past or information about things we've gone through, things we've moved through, lessons that we've possibly already learned are coming back around and offering us some like reassessment moment. There's like a window to reassess, to reinvestigate, or to review something that we've been through and to glean more from that, to gain some insight from that review process. And that could be like information coming to light, especially based on the transits occurring the next day, which I'll get to in a minute. But there could be information that's coming to light that changes your perspective in a pretty notable way. So pay attention to what you're hearing, what you're thinking. Could be like even psychically or through your dreams. A lot of interesting information that's bubbling up from maybe unexpected places. Reaching the end of our week now, on Saturday, May 24th, the Sun in Gemini forms a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. So again, we're at the very beginning. Pluto has reached 343 Aquarius, not the very beginning, but early Aquarius. And the Sun in Gemini is now meeting up with Pluto to form this trine. I really like Sun-Pluto trines. I find them really reinforcing. I'm a Sun-Pluto person, and when I experience the Sun-Pluto trine, it kind of feels like accessing my power in a different way that's much more gentle than my natal signature, a Sun-Pluto opposition. But like, it's a beautiful day to play with power and to explore how you assert yourself, how you hold your power, how you express your power, and what power means to you, especially in relational dynamics, especially in conversation, since we have two air signs in play here. Like, how do power dynamics show up in conversation, in the ideas that you toss around, in your friendships and your connections? There's a real exploration of ideas and the way that we can maybe connect and bring our life force energy together in order to birth something quite powerful and instrumental. So this moment is meaningful. This Sun-Pluto trine gives us maybe a burst of energy and power and strength that allows us to step forward towards something that feels truer. The moon then enters Taurus a little bit later, and the moon shifting from Aries to Taurus, there's a slowdown. We're wanting to digest our emotions. We're wanting to feel through things, maybe to literally eat our feelings or to do something that feels cozy for us physically. And that slowdown is important because Taurus processes information in a very different way than Aries. Aries is like fast, instinct, move, like get it done, follow the impulse, follow the fire. Whereas Taurus is like, I want to take my time and I want to feel it in my body. I want to feel into this yes. I want to deliberate. I want to ask myself, is this really true? Or is this just a fleeting impulse? And so this is a moment when the moon shifts into Taurus for us to get really cozy asking those questions and slowing down to process and actually hear the answer. Mercury in Taurus then forms a conjunction to Uranus in Taurus. And I mentioned aha moments, I mentioned information coming to light, and how this is a big week potentially for revelations. Well, this Mercury conjunct Taurus is that. This past weekend, on Saturday, May 17th, we experienced the Sun conjunct Uranus. And now we're experiencing Mercury conjunct Uranus. And this is an important moment. This is an aha or an answer to something that's been lingering in our consciousness at least for a week, if not more. And this conjunction can be a burst of insight. It can be an important conversation. It can be an unexpected message. It can be something that kind of comes out of the blue and changes our minds or shifts our perspective or offers us the missing piece. Sometimes that looks like surprising information. Sometimes we'll have big news stories hit with Mercury conjunct Uranus where it's like, whoa, that was a big deal and that just shocked me, or that opened something up that I wasn't familiar with before. And this Mercury conjunct Uranus is doing that. Could be personal, could be collective, possibly both. It could come in a whole bunch of different flavors and varieties, but the important thing is to pay attention and to stay present and to listen. And if we accept Taurus's invitation to slow down and be with our bodies, we'll be more receptive to whatever information comes through that Saturday. So that for you is a little nudge. Try slowing down on Saturday, May 24th, so that you can open up to really hear. It's a great day to kind of get off your phone and maybe put your phone aside and like go live, go do something, go be present, go really engage and see what happens. Finally, our final major transit of the week is the whopper, the one that I've been teasing at. Saturn enters Aries at the end of the day on Saturday, May 24th. So Saturn will be moving through the first couple degrees of Aries through September, and then it'll be retrograding back into Pisces for a while. So we have this first window from now through September, so like roughly, is that 4 or 5 months? I can't calculate right now in my brain. But Saturn entering Pisces is for now, entering Aries is for now closing out the Pisces chapter or era. We have more to come. Saturn will return, but for now we're exploring early cardinal and we are learning some things. Saturn is technically in fall in the sign of Aries. And so from a traditional perspective, this is a place where Saturn is extremely challenged, and we experience a lot of challenge around Saturn themes of leadership, of responsibility, of personal integrity. I suspect that Saturn in Aries will be really showing us the ugly, ugly truths of individualism, of our violent, oppressive systems, even more than we currently know. We'll be seeing more of it. We'll probably see an uptick in aggression and toxic masculinity, in a lot of like over assertion of the self and of the identity as like the thing. Sort of like rugged individualism comes to mind, especially with both Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And Neptune has a tendency to glorify or idealize things. And then Saturn has a tendency to show us our limitations, but doing that through bringing us into challenge with those things. And so with this combination of Neptune in Aries and Saturn in Aries, which we'll be dancing with for a while, we're struggling between our sort of like idealized version of Aries energy and then the harsh reality. And maybe like on the flip side, we develop a really pessimistic view. Like something I've been noticing for myself and for a lot of other people is a lot of really deep resentment, rage, fear, and exhaustion with cis men. And Aries is often associated with masculinity, and in its sort of overexpressed form can be toxic masculinity. It can be like rampant individualism. It can be deep misogyny and the violence that comes with that. It can be the patriarchy. And we will be challenged to explore those topics from a grounded place to not idealize one end or the other, and to come into some degree of balance where we don't say like, F you all men, toss them all out, float them out into the sea. I mean, I've been tempted to say that a lot recently. Maybe we're deciding to decenter men more and more, which is a great thing. Maybe we're deciding that we want to prioritize queer and femme community more and more, as opposed to centering men in our lives in whatever way we might still do that. That is a topic that's very up for discussion right now, that I see everywhere and that I see in my own life. And where can we find nuance? Where can we find some type of nuance when discussions of gender come up? There's a need for us to not get extreme in our beliefs in this moment, and to not act out violently and egoically from a place of fear. And I realize I'm really speaking vaguely here, and that's because these are big, vague, collective topics and things that are really charged. And there can be a lot of heated conversation around these topics when Saturn pokes its head into Aries, especially with Neptune nearby. We're going to see an uptick in fascism. We're going to see an uptick in rugged individualism, in patriarchal bullshit. I'm sorry I can't curse on here. Oops, sorry YouTube. But like, things are going to get heated. And we need to find our center and find people that we align with to help us stay grounded and rooted, and build systems of care that can help us move through this time and not get sucked into and absorbed into these really toxic ideologies, but also leave room for other people to come back from the edge, to not move into extremism. Like, we need open spaces in our community where we can usher in and welcome people who may be kind of coming back from some nasty ideologies and some nasty places. And so inroads, like building inroads and maintaining safe connections so that we can bring people back from the edge, feels like an important conversation that I think we'll be having a lot more of. The group that comes to mind is Life After Hate. This is a group that helps bring like former extremists back from the edge, people who were members of hate groups. And so my hope is that we see more and more efforts like that for people to really like bring especially cis men back from the edge from dangerous ideology. So that's a really big topic, but I'm just going to put it out there as something to think about as we move into Saturn and Aries, and at a personal level to start thinking about your Aries house and your cardinal houses and anything you have in the early degrees of the cardinal signs, as those will be first up on Saturn's agenda. All right, that was a mouthful. Let's get into the tarot. Okay, let's get into our tarot reading. So for the week of Sunday, May 18th through Saturday, May 24th, our anchor card this week, which represents the overall energy we're working with, is the Emperor. This is the Cosmic Slumber Tarot by Tillie Walden. I love this deck. And the Emperor notably is connected to Aries. So Aries is really loud this week for obvious reasons. If you just listen to the astro forecast, we are really exploring what sovereignty looks like, what leadership looks like, and what maybe the healthy expression of that looks like, as opposed to the unhealthy or even abusive expression of that. And standing in your power is a loud message from the Emperor. It asks, where are you sovereign and where are you self-sacrificing? Where are you being or standing in your power versus where are you misusing your power or using it to overpower other people instead of uplifting and empowering people around you too? There's a real difference when you see confident, sovereign energy that can be certainly like empowers the self, but also uplifts other people, is not threatened by other people's power, is able to stand in its own power and sort of like game see game. Like, I recognize you, I recognize me, and we're good. Let's stand together. The shadow side is overpowering, is abusive, is domineering, is someone who really tries to overassert themselves to the point of causing harm. And while I don't see that in this week's energy per se, this particular emperor does always strike me as a bit more shadowy than other emperors. And let's just think about emperor, period. Emperor connected to empire. Like the emperor represents empire. And so there is this contemplation around vast collective abuses of power, around literally like empire. I'm just gonna keep saying it, empire. Like around the imperialism and the exploitation, especially of nations like the US, especially capitalist nations, especially systems of oppression. Like this stuff is very, very loud right now for obvious reasons, but it's also loud in our own lives. And so where have we internalized beliefs around power that are really destructive and really messed up and really problematic? And how can we gently unhook from those, or maybe forcefully unhook from some of those beliefs and move toward a different way of being? This could be a moment where we're asked to stand in power or leadership in a new way. And that could require us to get really deeply honest about the ways that we have been showing up that have not been working for us or other people. And so there is a beautiful invitation, a beautiful call here for us to step into that sovereignty and to empower ourselves and other people. And that might come later in the week, especially when we experience that Sun-Pluto trine and when Saturn is like really on the edge, readying itself to enter Aries. Our challenge this week is the Ten of Cups reversed. The Ten of Cups is a Mars and Pisces card. And speaking of collective consciousness, speaking of our responsibility to the whole, speaking of those Saturn and Pisces lessons, it feels like this card is coming through with disappointment. It's coming through with letdown. Maybe we're let down by the people in our life. Maybe we're let down by our community. Maybe we feel really disappointed in a dream that didn't materialize. Mars and Pisces, and particularly the Ten of Cups in its upright form, can be gorgeous. It can be the deep pursuit of fulfillment. It can be us really realizing the dream and experiencing that moment of deep connection and almost like bliss that brings us together with like-minded souls, with kin, with people who we really resonate with at a soul level. And yet, it's in reverse. And so there is disconnection. There's maybe us coming to a place of acceptance that the dream unfortunately couldn't materialize. And that can feel like the crushing weight of Saturn and anoretic Pisces. Like the very end. This is not a place where new dreams are necessarily born. As dreamy and imaginative and beautiful as Pisces can be, there is so much grief wrapped up in Pisces too, because we know the end is near. We know we're approaching the conclusion, the period at the end of the sentence, or at least the ellipsis, where something has to come to a conclusion in order for something new to be born. But that requires us to really let go and surrender to what has not materialized, what has not panned out the way we'd hoped, what has not gone to plan. And this could be like the bubble popping moment where a dream is punctured, or where we finally come to accept that something is just not going to happen. And it's likely in relationships, although it doesn't have to be, but it is likely showing up in connections, in our emotional connections, in our communities, in our relationships. There's something that is just not showing itself to be what we'd hoped. And so how do you hold yourself through disappointment? Disappointment is such a Pisces word. I have Venus and Mars in Pisces, and I feel like a huge part of my grief in life has been my expectations being shattered, being let down by people when they show themselves to be human and not what I'd hoped for. When those expectations and hopes really sink quite quickly. We get this moment of bliss and then it's punctured. And we're like, I'm standing here, I've been pushed out of the boat, I'm wet, I'm cold, no one's here. Like I was having a great time on the party boat and now I'm in the water and they're moving along and they're not coming back. And that can kind of feel like 10 of Cups reversed. Like maybe we tasted really beautiful love, or maybe we tasted something that felt like the dream, or we thought we had realized something only to see that it would not actually come to fruition. And so we know what it's like, and that almost makes it more painful. We've seen what it's like. We've seen the potential, and then the potential gets shut down by reality. And that is very Saturn in Pisces. It's very anoretic Saturn in Pisces. Like, in these final moments, how can we make genuine space for the grief of unmet expectations, of sunken hopes, of the dreams that just couldn't pan out? It requires a lot of tenderness. It requires us to be gentle with ourselves and to honor that pain, because it is very, very real and valid. Our gift this week is the Ace of Cups reversed. So the Ace of Cups, when it's upright, is this beautiful opportunity in love and care and emotion and connection. It's like the promise of something, or at least the hope for something that could be incredibly nourishing and gorgeous. Something that is like overflowing, like our cup overfloweth. We suddenly feel like, oh my God, in this moment, I feel like there is so much ahead of me. It's that standing at the edge and beginning to see and beginning to hope and dream. When it shows up in reverse, it can have a similar effect to the Ten of Cups reversed, but this is our gift this week. And there's a cup that we are pouring out because we realize it was never going to live up to what we hoped it would. We're intentionally releasing the expectation and the drama and the pressure that we've placed on something or someone to be our end-all be-all. And in emptying that cup, in moving forward, we create more space for ourselves. So while the Ten of Cups reverse can be a really painful moment, it can also be an opening to something that is real. Because fantasies, as beautiful as they are not rooted. They are fantasies for a reason. They help us determine or like suss out what it is that we want and desire. And they help us use our imaginations to birth new realities. They can be the precipice of new realities that we forge and create, but they are not, in the moment that they're birthed, fantasies are not, quote, real. And this is my Taurus Mercury that's getting all 3D about shit. But like, that's an important distinction, because fantasies can become real, but in the moment they're created, they're not 3D real actualized. And if we skip ahead 1,000 steps and begin attaching and emotionally investing in something that is not yet growing in like real visible ways, we can experience a lot of pain. And that's when we get attached to an outcome and when our hearts end up shattered if that doesn't come to fruition. This feels like we are letting go of the grief of those unmet expectations. We're pouring it out, we're honoring it, we're feeling it, and we're also recognizing that in emptying the cup, we have this vessel that's waiting for new hope and new opportunity. And this could be like us realizing that we have to take back our own self-worth, our own power, our own joy, that we need to invest in ourselves. Maybe we've been investing in the wrong things or the wrong people. And this is the moment that we decide, I'm going to like empty that out and I'm going to bring this cup back to me, and I'm going to go have a drink over here by myself for a moment and just think about what's gone down and reflect and come back to myself a bit. So this moment, while it could feel kind of like tragic in a way, if you're that deep, or it could just feel kind of like sad and melancholy if it's not so intense, this moment, while complicated, can also be really generative and can also be very healing. So let yourself feel, let yourself sit with it, and then try dreaming in a new way. What have you learned from the last couple years of Saturn and Pisces? It's probably been quite profound. You've probably shifted your relationship to your dreams, to your imagination, to your hopes. And that knowledge is important. And just because things didn't pan out the way you'd hoped does not mean that they were any less real. Just because things didn't stay doesn't mean they're any less real. Just because things are not going maybe the way that you'd hoped doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path. It just means that things didn't go the way you'd hoped. So this is a moment to redefine and kind of rework the way we relate to hope itself, and to see hope as this source of sustenance that can keep our hearts alive, keep our imaginations alive, keep our art alive. And if you can use your creative energy to begin gently going back to the drawing board and maybe rooting your dreams in a different way than you did before, this could be a moment where your spirit gets revitalized and you open up to a new, maybe slightly more practical way of visioning and dreaming. Okay, this was such a long-winded reading. So apologies for that. And I hope it was supportive in some way. If it was and you want to share feedback, please do comment below or leave me a review or like or share or subscribe if you haven't already. And again, if you would like to find more content from me, astrology, tarot, etc., you can join me over on Patreon or find me on any of the other various platforms that I'm on, all of which are linked down below. All right, y'all, I'm sending you love, and I hope you have a beautiful week.